Welcome to today's broadcast of North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of NIC television students, and your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
This is a very special day for us at North Idaho College, and certainly on the North Idaho College Public Forum. We're happy to welcome to the program one of our faculty members who has just recently been notified that she would be receiving this year the William H. Murdy National Teacher of the Year Award, which is given by the Association of Community College Trustees in the United States. I want to emphasize the prestige of this award by indicating that community colleges in all 50 states that belong to the association are involved with this particular organization, and those trustees have selected this year one of our own. She will be going to Florida soon to receive this award at their national convention. Our guest is Dr. Virginia Tinsley Johnson. She is the chair of the Department or Division of English and Foreign Languages at North Idaho College. She also instructs in the field of English. She's had many other positions at North Idaho College and has been here since 1966. In addition to that, she holds a BA degree from the College of Idaho in English, a master's from the University of Idaho in English, and received her doctorate at Idaho State University in the field of English. Her list of accomplishments are too long to list all of them, but I would like to emphasize some of those that I think certainly point to why she deserves this very prestigious national award. She has created the Lake City Writers Conference to involve young writers grades 1 through 9. She also coordinated the regional Idaho State Writing Assessment Program and worked with others in the secondary school teachers area on this particular project. She has also received the Excellence in Teaching Award from the Inland Northwest Council of Teachers of English. That has also come to her in 1987. Her students have done well too. For example, she instructed Larry Earl, who was the winner of the St. Martin's Press National Bedford Essay Contest in the fall of 1986. She also instructed 3 first-place North Idaho College Essay Contest winners. Our guest also serves as the chair of the Curriculum Council at North Idaho College, and it's been my pleasure to work closely with her as a co-division chair for a number of years. And I can testify to the fact that she is an excellent teacher and also an excellent administrator. Virginia, may I be the first person on the program, and I know the panel will join with me in this as they take their turns. I want to commend you and to say how excited we are that you have received this National Teacher Award, and I can think of no one that is more deserving. And the number one reason for this program is to pay tribute to you and for all of our campus to celebrate your award with our viewers throughout the Northwest. Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much, Tony. It's nice of you.
Also, in addition to paying tribute to you, we want to take advantage of this opportunity to talk to you about the theory of teaching and what makes a good teacher. In order to accomplish all that, I'm so happy to welcome 3 of your very close friends to our panel today. To my immediate left is State Senator Mary Lou Reed of Idaho, who I think has known you for about 25 years and has been close to you, and she certainly will have much to say, I'm sure, about this honor. Next to her is Fran Barr, who also is in the Department of English and is a member of the faculty. She also chairs the College Senate at North Idaho College. And Fran, I want to recognize both you and our next panel member because you two really started this process of nominating Dr. Johnson for this award. And the academic dean, Dennis Connors, and the president, Robert Bennett, worked with you in that. And our next panel member is Laureen Belmont, who's also from the Department of English, and is one of our fine faculty members along with Fran. And I want to take this opportunity too to say thanks to both of you for initiating this process. And with that, I would turn to State Senator Mary Lou Reed.
Thank you, Tony. Ginny, I think we could get very sloppy here. I want you to know that I'm very, very proud of you too. I followed you and your career for all these years, and I know how much time and effort you've put in, how much caring you've given to the whole profession of teaching and to your students. And hip, hip, hooray. We're really proud of you.
Thank you, Lou.
Well, let's start off and ask you to do some talking about teaching. First of all, when you go into that classroom, what is your primary objective? What do you really want your students to learn? How come you're so good?
Oh gosh, well that's a tough one to answer. You know, we're all trained to not toot our own horns, so this is a difficult question. And of course, I've had to think a lot about what makes good teaching. I think this award has really made me focus on that. And I really enjoyed, through serendipity, re-listening again to a Prairie Home Companion show where Garrison Keillor was talking about good teaching. And he said that a good teacher teaches people how to love life. And I thought, that really hits it. That's really at the heart of what good teaching, I think, is, that making students come alive and to appreciate just being alive. And how I do that, I don't know. I try to I guess, spread some of my joy of living and of knowing things, and just actually the joy of acquiring knowledge and having that power that I think knowing, for example, how to write gives one. That once you have that power, you can really manipulate in a positive way a lot of aspects of your life.
So in some ways you're trying to touch those buttons and open their eyes to certain things. And so you're certainly using your own abilities and experience, but you're also having to be, I suspect, pretty sensitive to what those things are that they're going to respond to. So you're constantly teaching, but you're also learning.
Absolutely. I've said many, many times that as soon as I learn how to teach it and get it right, then I better quit, because I keep feeling every year as though I'm still learning how to teach effectively, how to reach those students, and I still haven't got it down yet. So I hope that I'll keep being challenged. I know that I have been for 20-some years, and I still am.
Well, you're obviously doing a lot of things right.
Thanks.
Randbar.
Thank you. As a member of the department, I work with Virginia all the time, and I think I can say completely that she is a person who loves life, and I think that her administering the department has been as wonderful for all of us other teachers as her loving life has helped her students. But one thing I did want to ask her is, who was it, Virginia, in your life who has influenced you so much that you wanted to be a teacher, that you wanted to share your love of life with your students?
Well, Fran, I've really had a series of teachers who have done that. The first one I recall very clearly was a 4th grade teacher who made me love literature and being in plays and sort of hamming it up, and I think that probably has quite a lot to do with effective teaching, is being able to sort of be on in the classroom. And then I had an 8th grade English teacher whose name, by the way, was Mrs. Johnson. And she was just a hard taskmaster. She taught us to diagram sentences, which most people hated, but I saw as a wonderful challenge and a big game. And she challenged me in my life to read the biography of Madame Curie, which I picked up off the library shelf one day, and she said, well, that book's too tough for you, and those are fighting words to a bibliomaniac. I mean, I read all the time, the cereal boxes, you name it. And that book had a major influence on my life for what a woman could accomplish with her life, reading the story. But I think the person who probably hit me at the most crucial part of my life was Roger Marks, who was my high school English teacher, who got me very active in debate and in drama and in writing, all sorts of things, poetry, radio plays, which I'd never thought of writing before. And I'm just delighted that I'll be able to see Roger Marks at a conference I'm going to on Thursday, and I'm going to sneak a little honor in on him too, because he was so influential. And he was the one who really directed me toward college and sort of said, you can do it, that it's all right to have fun, by the way, while you're learning these things. You don't have to be a stuffed shirt. And then when I was in college at the College of Idaho, a couple of women who were my mentors, Miss Sinclair and Miss Boone, who encouraged me to go on to graduate school. And it was Miss Sinclair who had met Van Wyck Brooks, who's a famous American literary critic, and who said about him that he was the most humble man she'd ever met, that he was a great scholar and yet he was very humble. And those words really stayed with me too, the idea that when one is really learned, that doesn't mean that he has to be a real stuffed shirt again about that. And then when I was in college at the University of Idaho in graduate school, I had some remarkably funny instructors who again brought life to the classroom, who were learned, who were wonderful scholars, but yet they enjoyed what they were doing. And I think that whole business of having the information and knowing it and yet imbuing it with a lot of love and interest and humor, those were the people who really moved me along the way and said to me, teaching is a really, I suppose this is a cliche, a noble profession, but it is, and it's an enlivening one for the teacher and for the students.
So from that end, there were a great many teachers who really had a profound influence on you.
Yes, definitely.
Well, I would like to ask you then to point you in another direction. What have your students taught you? What have your students taught you that you've learned and that you think have made you a happier or a better person?
Well, I pick up humility again, as Van Wyck Brooks would say. They certainly have taught me humility often, and one of the most valuable lessons, which I learned in a methods class, but of course what you learn in methods class really doesn't always translate into real life. But one lesson was that you should never be afraid to say, I don't know. And I didn't believe that when I first started teaching. I thought, well, I'm supposed to be the teacher, so I know everything, and I can't let anything slip. I can't indicate that I don't know anything. And through some humbling experiences with students who knew more than I did, who forced me into admitting I don't know, that has been a valuable lesson. And it's been a really positive lesson in that it humanizes me, I think, as a teacher, and to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. Or a better trick is, I don't know, why don't you find out? Which makes the student do the research and gets me off the hook. I've learned about the complexity of life from my students, I think, about the dignity of a lot of people. I think particularly of a lot of women who have returned to school after a number of years, who have raised their families to school age, often their children, and who then sort of give the old Peggy Lee line, is this all there is? And then they come back to school and they manage to balance sometimes a fairly grumpy husband who hasn't had this wife who's wanted to aspire to learning, plus children, plus jobs, plus entering a whole new realm for them, and how much dignity they carry that off with, the complexity of their lives.
Lorene Belmont.
Well, I would like to add my congratulations, of course. You're a wonderful boss, Ginny.
Thank you, Lorene.
I would like to go back to something that Tony mentioned earlier. You have a student who won the Bedford Essay Contest, and I wonder if you could show us a little bit how you got him to that process.
Oh, I'd love to do that. I'm so proud of Larry Earl. Larry is a man who is a 20-year Navy veteran and had a couple of stints that he did in Vietnam, and who, after 20 years, had never written or really released any of his feelings or experiences about Vietnam. It was all bottled up inside him. And he started out in my class as someone who had obviously been in charge and who wasn't too sure that he wanted to take, quote, orders from a woman. And we sort of just opened that little can of worms right away and cleared the air about he was willing to learn from me if I was going to be honest and forthright and upright, and wasn't going to let anybody read his writing. He was very concerned about the privacy of his own writing, and I assured him that that was the case, that I would be the only one reading it. And I have my students, as you know, keep a journal in the class, and one of the entries that he was asked to write was in response to a sound that he had heard. And he began writing about a sound that he had heard when he was in Vietnam of gunfire and an attack. And from that, he pulled out of his memory some very, very, very painful scenes of being in a convoy parked along a roadway in Vietnam and being approached by some small children. And the men in the convoy, he said, were really hungering to just touch and be around small children. Some of them had families at home, even though they had been ordered not to. And he was quite busy taking pictures with his camera when these children approached. And one little girl had a candy box that had a bomb in it and handed this to one of the soldiers, and it blew up and killed a couple of men and severely wounded Larry's best friend, who was badly mutilated, half his body blown away. And Larry then told about this pact that he had made with his best friend before they even entered into Vietnam, that they would, if one of them were severely wounded, mortally wounded, the other would let his friend die. And as he was there in the convoy, the medic had put a tourniquet on his friend and was trying to soothe him, and Larry then took over for him and was holding the tourniquet, and the medic looked at him and just shook his head. And John, Larry's friend, said, "Let me go." And so he did. He had to release the tourniquet and saw his friend dying in his arms. Well, of course, I responded to that with a great deal of humility. I was deeply humbled by the fact that he had shared this very touching event with me, that I was honored that he trusted me with that information. and was so moved that I said, Larry, I think this deserves to be written in an essay form. And it was. He trusted me enough to rewrite it in another format, and then he wrote it about 10 times, as a matter of fact. He had learned how to use a word processor, and he was one who believed in polishing things. And we entered that into the NIC essay contest, where he won first prize. And then I said, Larry, let's go for the top. Why don't you submit this to St. Martin's Press, the Bedford Essay Contest? And so he did. He sent it off. And it took several months for word to get back to us, but he was chosen from among 900 students nationally in community and other colleges, and he was one of 19 winners. His essay, his name is right up there with students from Harvard and Yale and University of Texas, and I was just really glowing. Well, we weren't through writing then when that was over, though. Once the prize was announced, then Larry was asked to fill out about a 6-page questionnaire, and I had to write 10 pages in response to questions. And the essay will be published in a textbook that St. Martin's puts out, the Bedford Reader, and there's a chance that his writing and mine will appear with it, along with some rough drafts, because in the book they explain how the essay came about and put some of the drafts with my comments and Larry's comments about it.
What kind of questions did they ask you?
Oh, they asked the same one that started this marathon gab that I'm giving, and that was, how did this essay come about? And then questions of me on sort of my theory about teaching writing, and then of Larry, how he described his writing process. You know, what does his room look like as he writes, and how many times did he revise, and how does he avoid writing, which he interestingly enough said he doesn't do, that he really enjoys writing. And he has since, by the way, written several other memoirs about Vietnam and about his travels in Africa. And I think I just was so lucky to be the person at that time of his life who managed to just push the button, as you said, Lou, and out all this came. And it was wonderful.
Well, Virginia, you've given just excellent demonstration of how teaching involves not only the classroom, but very individual instruction. I would like to take advantage of our opportunity with you to have you to somewhat walk through the role of a teacher, particularly at the college level, both in the classroom and outside. What all does it encompass? I'm particularly addressing the different kinds of, or I should say, techniques that one could use in the classroom to create interest and spark interest, and then how do you follow that outside the class? What are some of the different tools and techniques?
Well, the journal is one that I find extremely useful, and I use that not only in my composition classes, but in my literature classes. Both guided and sort of free writing. What I mean by guided is the sort of thing Larry responded to. Respond to a smell or a sound and tell about that, or listen to conversations and record them, so that the students are really learning how to be good observers of life, and therefore to translate that observation and detail into their writing. And more unguided, sort of a dear diary with some control, so that it doesn't become the weather was nice, but really I think it was Plato who said the unexamined life is not worth living, and so I asked them to examine their lives and to create meaning, or to find the meaning, or to give the meaning to their lives if they can. In my literature class, I use it as a gauge for how well I'm doing. If I find the students are writing nothing, I'm not doing very well. They haven't read it or they haven't understood it. I also use a technique that we picked up in a wonderful class that we took on the writing project called an entry slip, or an exit slip, which I've used in both kinds of classes. Before we begin the class, I say, write and tell me, and it will depend on what I'm after. If they've done a reading assignment in literature, say in the Canterbury Tales, for example, I'll say, describe the wife of Bath to me in 10 minutes, and that will make sure that they've read it, and it also assures me that they have understood it. And if they haven't, then I can immediately address that. I can help them find their way through that. So those are a couple of techniques to use in the classroom. Another technique that I like to use, that I know my colleagues use a lot, is conferencing with them individually on their writing, either in my office or during class, so that I intervene right in the writing process where there are problems, instead of waiting until the paper comes in and then writing my heart out and then having them look at it and throw it in the wastebasket, but really making them accountable as the writing goes on. I like to involve them with each other in small group discussions, either with questions that I've generated or that they have generated, maybe in an entry slip. What are the questions you want to ask about this piece of this poem? And then say, okay, go at it, you talk about it. Or through peer editing, where they intervene in each other's writing. and try to help one another through the process of writing. Outside the classroom, again, the journal lets me know a great deal about that, what's going on in their lives outside the classroom. And another technique that we've used too is to ask them to share with us a sort of get acquainted sheet at the beginning of the class about who they are and what jobs they have. That's a valuable insight to know how they're spending their time. Students who try to spend 30 hours a week and take 18 credits are not going to do too well. And what sorts of things they like to write about and what problems they have with writing, so that we know in advance what other things in their lives, like children and jobs, may be intervening, and then try to be sensitive to that. If a student says, I couldn't get my paper done because my kid had the flu, well, I'm a working mother too, and I understand that, and that family does come first many times.
Thank you. Melu Reed.
Jeannie, it's been my observation that over the years that you really do care about your students, but you also care very much about language. And I've heard you say time and time again that what we're after is precision in language, or precise language. Would you talk about that a little bit, about what your goals are there and what you do to help students become a little bit more sensitive, or a great deal more sensitive, to that need for precision?
Well, I suppose in a couple of ways, Lou. One is through modeling. I hope that my own language isn't too filled with errors. I'm not sure about that. I don't always hear myself. Another is through modeling with the writing of professional writers, so that they hear and see what good and precise writing is. Another technique that we share, I think, is using punctuation, teaching punctuation through dictation, which is a way to sneak good writing in on them. And what we do there is to read to them a passage by a professional writer and ask them to dictate, we dictate rather, and ask them to write it down. And then they may ask questions about the punctuation in that passage that we can answer yes or no. And they have to figure out where the periods and the commas and semicolons go. And then we tell them where the writer put them and talk about why those punctuation marks were there and what language was chosen and why, so that they're they actually have the physical act of writing those words down and putting the punctuation in and discussing why those things are there. Another way of dealing with precision is being Aunt Picky, I call myself. And as the students progress in their writing process, from gaining ideas and drafting, to really talk to them and to correct their papers and to say, this isn't the word you want. Mountains cannot be statuesque. I warn them of the dangers of thesauritis, where I tell them that, yes, do use your thesaurus and try to increase your vocabulary. However, be careful, because just because the word's a synonym doesn't mean it has precisely the same meaning, and you really need to look in your dictionary for those shades of meaning. Another thing I like to do with them is give them practice on writing things that contain a lot of detail and ask them to expand and to really search for words that can help to recreate smell and taste and touch, so that the reader can respond and have that same experience. And make your reader smell with you, make your reader hear with you, recreate things. Another method that's worked pretty well is one called show, don't tell, where you ask them not to tell you about an encounter between a man and woman, but to show through the dialogue and look for the precise words that are going to recreate the senses that are going on there and the feelings between those two people, so that they can understand the necessity for precision. And then I think of one that's sort of an anti-political one, excuse me, Senator, but often through negative examples. Frequently we can use jargon that politicians generate to show the dangers of using imprecise language to fog up and shade meaning.
Oh, we can give you lots of examples for that. Do you really feel then that you're partly teaching them to read through teaching them to write? Is this a two-edged sword?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the other part of that is to teach them to think through writing. That I really believe, after many years of doing writing and learning about it, that, here I am using another quotation, but E.M. Forster was right in asking, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? That all the stuff that's in the mind is really sort of a hodgepodge until it's written down. And then it can be examined and analyzed and corrected and altered in any way that I, as a writer, might see the necessity for it.
I think those of us who are politicians could probably use a great deal from some of your teaching skills. we have something to learn about precision in language.
Fran Barr.
Thank you. I think it must be evident by now what an inspiration Ginny is to all of us in the division. And I think one question that we all wonder at times is, how do you keep your energy level up? You've been a teacher for 20 years now? 20 years. And I think you're just as fresh and as new and as excited about it as you must have been when you were a youngster. I can't imagine anybody being more excited.
Well, I know more now, but I don't know that. I really don't know that. I think it's back to what I said earlier about as soon as I learn to do it right, I better quit. That it's a challenge to me to keep trying to learn how to be the best teacher and to reach all the students. And of course I admit that it's impossible, but it's still Don Quixote on the horse, you know. Reach the impossible dream, keep after those windmills. And I guess I was born being energetic. Check with my mother, she'll assert that one. That I just do have a lot of energy, and I don't know where it comes from. It is sort of a gift to have a lot of energy. Although on the weekends, I spend some time as a couch potato. I have to recharge my batteries by doing that. And I do that too in the summer. I try to really sort of not think a lot about the classroom, although I'm reading all the time, as you well know, sharing novels with me. And just through the act of reading, I think that's, to be serious for a minute, to read journals about my profession, to go to conferences that deal with the profession and the art of teaching and being an administrator, and coming back and saying, well, I still haven't done that one right, let's try another tack on this. And I think if one thing I'm in danger of, that's the flash and fizzle phenomenon that I've probably demonstrated before, with a really hot idea and come in all charged up and then it sort of fizzles out. But I think the act of teaching and the challenge every semester of here's a new batch, to another batch of fresh students, let's see what I can do this time. I think that's part of it, probably.
I wish we could continue this conversation, but the clock wins on this program and we have to move on. But I want to say on behalf of the panel and our staff, once again, congratulations to Dr. Virginia Tinsley Johnson for receiving this very outstanding award. And I want to remind those viewers who have tuned in late that Dr. Johnson just recently was notified that she was the recipient of the William H. Murdy National Teacher of the Year Award, which is given by the Association of Community College Trustees in the United States. She is truly the National Community College Teacher of the Year. We're so delighted, and we've been very fortunate to have you on this program. It's been an inspiration to us all here on the panel, and I know to our viewing audience. Once again, congratulations, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll join us again next week at the same time when we will discuss what we believe to be an important topic. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at the same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by an NIC student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.